CGP.
Cleveland Gaming Podcast.
Video games, culture, anime, toys, pinball, tabletop.
CGP.
Cleveland
Gaming Podcast.
Here we go.
CGP. This is the Cleveland Gaming Podcast.
CGP.
Time to press start.
Greetings, salutations, and what's up, fellow nerds, gamers, and everyone in between. It's nothing short of a joy to have you listening to this, the Cleveland Gaming Podcast. My name is Corey, program director, MC of the Cleveland Gaming Classic, and number 3 on the leaderboards, and happily so, because I got with me number 1, the final boss, the man, the myth, the legend, looking so silky and smooth, Mr. Tom Jenkins. I can tell, sir, you are ready to roll today.
I'm ready, and it's just the smooth sound of your voice followed by almost equally as good our intro to the CGP. But I'm so happy to be back here. So happy to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and let me tell you, flattery will get you nowhere in this competition because we're about to have ourselves
darn
a fantasy draft with 2 Cleveland Gaming Classic veterans here on the show today. The show is brought to you by you, your ear holes, for listening, for sharing, for liking, and following the Cleveland Gaming Classic. We can't wait to see you at the show this year, but we also can't wait to show you this high stakes and epic competition for bragging rights. Tom, you ready to get into it?
I say we bring him on. Let's do it. You ready?
Yeehaw, sir. Yeehaw. Tom is a dark horse, if only because he doesn't have a surly mane of hair like a horse, and I think he's just jealous. So he wants to go from behind.
Man, we're not even on here 10 minutes and the hair jokes are flying already.
Playing the bald guy jokes already?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm only doing it because otherwise you would volunteer it as self-pity. I'd rather it be a sharp dagger.
It's actually true. I do usually self-hate on myself because of my baldness.
Bald is beautiful, though, and trust me, like, even though I might look like a broke Backstreet Boy, that doesn't mean I get to make stocks like a broke Backstreet Boy with my haircut. That's just not a thing.
It is true, because I'm usually guilty of making a coiffed hair joke as soon as I see you, just because I'm just straight up jealous.
I think people out there should also be jealous of all of us because we got a podcast we're running and we're about to have ourselves a grand old time. What's up, fellow gamers, nerds, and everyone in between? Welcome to the Cleveland Gaming Podcast. My name is Corey and I am 3rd on the leaderboard. But with me, as always, is number 1 at the top, the reigning champ, the final boss of CGC himself. It's Mr. Tom Jenkins. Tom, what's up, dude?
Oh, hey, Corey. Good to be back. Sorry, it's just the middle of a intense Battletoads game.
Which, for some insane reason, you are actually insanely good at. Like, listeners, he actually can beat the what are they like pod racers? What is it? The carts that they ride on. What are they called?
I don't know. Battle somethings or others. I don't know. The level with the jumping vehicle thing. I don't know. You will always catch me playing Battletoads. Sorry. Controller's down. I'm here, Corey. I'm focused. I'm ready. Ready to do this.
Whether it's with Battletoads or beyond, you always put it perfectly, Tom. But it's not just myself and the final boss on the episode this week, because we need some competition for this fantasy draft, and joining us is vendor at the Cleveland Gaming Classic. From BD Mods, it's Brian Dittfeld. What's up, dude? Good to have you on the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. You know, we always like to ask people before we get into it, what game are you playing right now? What's right now loaded up for you?
Right now, in between everything else, I've been kind of playing Final Fantasy 14 because just I love
the new mod came out, right? The new I guess patch. The new version of it.
Yeah, there was a recent patch. Yep, the expansion for it comes out end of June, so just kind of getting things ready for that. Then also play Fortnite with my son and stuff at times. So, and Helldivers 2. That's the other one I got going right now.
So one of those games I know nothing about, and I won't answer which one it is. But in Fortnite, is it like a actual competitive with you and your son, or is there like build mode, no build? What do you guys do? What is it?
He builds. I don't.
It's too hard, right? I get lost.
Yeah,
I get
no,
lost.
yeah. if I was younger, maybe I would be able to do it. But yeah, the building just becomes too much for me. I play it like a Medal of Honor or Call of Duty when we're playing it.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Just as gaming intended it to be, if you ask me. But speaking of intending, I'm intending to introduce our next guest. What a segue on my part. From the Tech Buzz, and of course, friend of CGC. You found him last year behind the main stage doing some great interviews, and now he's on our show. Heywood, what's up, dude?
What's going on, Corey? Thanks for having me. Hey, Tom.
I was going to say, were you only going to thank Corey, or I was part of that?
No, I would never do such a thing. But you always thank the man with the mic, and then the other guy just kind of rolls behind.
Yeah, or an order of most
Listen,
care. I got it.
I got the email.
Sure.
Corey said to make sure, just to kind of throw subtleties in there and say thanks, Tom, every now and again, so you didn't feel bad. So I wanted to make sure I stayed on script.
At least we're transparent.
That's what he's paying me to do. So I'm
right,
just
we're
saying.
here.
I'm just saying. I'm throwing that out there.
No, we're pumped to
And
be
for-
here. Thanks for being here, guys.
No,
And
really.
for the spirit
thanks
of transparency, the check is in the mail as well, Stephen. For
Oh,
transparency's sake,
appreciate
of
that. Appreciate that.
course. What are you playing? What's your recent game of
So-
choice, sir?
Like Brian got the kids rolling. We're doing Fortnite. I do zero build because like the rest of us here, I can't do that. But solo, I'm doing the new Peach game. I'm playing out in the Switch, trying to beat that, and also Alone in the Dark for the PS5. That is a killer game if you like jump scare mystery type games. Great game. And then we have a family game we just did last night for. We actually did it live, believe it or not. We had some camera angles set up. We did the whole steering wheel setup with Mario Kart 8. We had a bunch of friends over. We played for like 3 hours and streamed that live. A lot of fun, all the tracks and stuff, and doing like a tournament. So that was a lot of fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun, and we can't wait to seeing whatever you got to send out there in the Tech Buzz world. Of course, we'll talk about sharing those socials later on, but for now, we got ourselves a game here in Audio Land on CGP. You see, folks, I always like to cook up something fun, and I brought these three guys here with me. Of course, Tom always comes because he has nothing better to do. Not like he's
I was
running a
gonna
video
say,
game
I
convention.
didn't have a choice, Corey. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ain't that true? We are going to have ourselves something that is really close to my heart, something I do on a daily basis. Friends, we're about to do a fantasy draft. Well, we got to draft out some video game related things. Folks, we're going to have the CGP 2024 video game controller draft. Here's how it goes. I've got these three guys that are going to compete head-to-head in a contest of champions. And let me tell everyone out there, and of course our players, how this game is going to work. These three guys will take turns at assembling their best lineup of video game controllers. We're going to do 3 rounds of this, where each of these guys, one controller at a time, is going to take it to add to their quote-unquote fantasy game room. By the end of this, each player will have 3 separate controllers, and we are going to determine who has the best lineup of video game controllers of all time. Now, like most drafts, we're going to operate similarly. Once one of the controllers are taken, that closes it off for anyone else in the room. So you have to act strategically and get it before anyone else has a chance to nab it off the, we're going to say, grand swath of controllers that are out there. And this is also going to be a snake draft. That means that if you were the first one to draft in round number 1, you're going to be the last one in the next round, and vice versa, to give people a chance to both get first, get last, and get it while the getting's good. At the end of this draft, well, we're going to determine ourselves a winner, but truthfully, the points don't matter. Whose line is it anyway style. We're going to determine it based on a series of factors that I completely made up. So if I don't pick the people that you think won, well, I'll take your flame in the comments, but it's all about the spirit of having a good time. The game, I'm sure, is as clear as mud, as Brian put it earlier, and I can see right now from looking at the screen that he is just looking sharp and ready. And now, as a guy who deals with controllers on a daily basis, Brian, are you ready to sweep this one up 1, 2, 3?
I'm hoping.
Tom, I think somehow we got the short end of the stick here because
the
guy with the controller experience gets to go first nonetheless. And this is going to be ugly.
Yeah, I was just about to listen. I know, like, I'm player 2 in the background here, like, of this CGP podcast, but not until you said that, Steven, I'm like, oh, okay. So, Brian, Thanks a lot. It was great. Congratulations. You're going to do great.
Go easy on us, Brian. Come on. Go easy.
I'll try, but I mean, you know what my first pick's going to be. I mean,
I
I'm
hope
sure
I know
you
what your
guys-
first pick is going to be because I'm looking for a way to weasel a way to get it also.
Man,
We
you
already
guys
see
already
that we're
talking
playing
some
the
fun.
band
I
now.
like
I think
it.
I know, and I think I know what you're thinking.
Well, I love that they're getting into each other's minds here, and as you could tell, dear listeners, we already picked at random. I actually asked Tom to give me a number 1 through 10. I clicked a random name generator that many times, and it landed on these. We're going to have in round number 1 in this order. Brian is first out of the pick order. That means he gets to pick supposedly the best controller of all time, followed by the man, the myth, the legend, Steven, and then of course the final boss, Tom Jenkins.
I think we've done quite enough explaining. Let's dive in. Tom, are you ready to begin this?
Yeah, I think so. Do I have to like go easy on people since we're kind of the host, Corey? Is this like, or is that set aside?
That's up for you to determine how you want people to look at you, sir. That's not on
Okay,
me.
great. Okay, got it. Check. Steven, Brian, love you guys.
Steven, you ready to ride, sir?
Let's go. I'm ready.
Then that brings us, of course, to Brian. You, sir, get the first pick overall of the 2024 CGP Video Game Controller Draft. All right, sir, you're on the board. What controller do you want to take?
I'm going with Old Faithful. I'm going with the original NES controller.
Ooh, all right. He's going with perhaps one of the most bought controllers, especially in the 80s, the NES controller. What drove you to make that choice, sir?
It feels great and it plays great. I mean, it's still probably to this day has one of the best D-pads on it out of anything out there, and just the simplicity of it.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're using simplicity as a factor here.
Also, the idea that the feedback, the pressure on the button mattered a lot. That was a big revolution when it came to that NES controller and kind of the scope of what all controllers could do. So I like that pick as to at least how it feels and the legacy of it. Tom, where are you landing on here with him getting the NES controller first?
Listen, it's safe. It's like a Tom Brady of controllers here, right? Like, let's just pick one. You got to dink and dunk 4-yard passes all season on us with the NES controller. No, it's a good pick. It's a safe pick. I think it's great.
Steven, how you feel?
I hate you. That was I was wrestling between that and another one because I was like sitting there going, oh, if he picks this, what am I gonna do? But I agree with Tom. I think that's a safe pick. Pick.
Yeah, it was up there in my own personal draft of it. It wouldn't be number 1 for me, but if I was in the first round, I'd be scoping it at least. Going to round 1, we're going to pivot and go to our next picker, and that's, of course, Steven. Steven, you're on the board. The clock is yours. What do you want to be your first pick?
So out of the 65 consoles that I have, and out of the different consoles that I've played over the years, I'm going PS5 controllers, the greatest of all time. That is the GOAT.
Whoa, I like it.
I know that's bold, but I'm going there. That is my controller. I will put it on the Xbox. I will use it there just because I love the feel of the PS5 controller.
I mean, I will give it to you. I like the idea of taking it based on feel, and the PS5 controller feels sexy in the hand, sir. I gotta agree with you there.
The mix of the touch screen effects with it, the rumble, the microphone built in, the speaker built in. I mean, you've got the greatest of everything on it.
I don't know so much about the microphone. I feel like my microphone's a little bit weak on my PS5 controller. I mean, I would use a different headset.
But in a pinch it works.
I won't disagree with you there. The master of controllers himself, Brian, what do you think about that? It's a contemporary pick, certainly.
I can't disagree with him. I mean, it does have a good feel to it. I'm never, when it comes to the PS5 though, again, like the D-pad, not so much. I mean, even though I know most modern games are using the analog sticks, and I just, and personally, and again, it's all personal preference. It's just when it comes to the analog sticks, I like the layout more of an Xbox controller. Instead of having both of them at the bottom, I like them, the one more at the top, and then second in the lower right corner. So,
personal preferences, but shots certainly fired. Steven, do you want to rebut?
Well, I did. That just shows too that we don't play build mode, because I'll tell you what, having those analog sticks at the bottom for places. The other cool thing is I have the DualSense Edge. Like, I paid the $200 for that ridiculous controller.
Ooh.
having those additional bumpers on the back on the PS5 controller when you're building in Fortnite, prime example, or back when Fortnite had augments, it was so sweet to hit those back bumpers on that. It just felt natural on that controller. And so I'm not trying to sound like a PlayStation pony here, but honest to God, like I fell in love with this controller, and I'm just like, man, how can I use it on other systems? So
yeah, because it's a lot like the Xbox Elite controller, which same concept. I mean, having the paddles in the back, I almost feel like that needed to be a standard, not a add-on. But of course, you know, they want to make more money on you. But I just feel like at this point, you know, because paddles were kind of a thing in the previous consoles, that you would have thought they would have kind of standardized that. Because I'm with you. It doesn't. You don't think you would like them until you start using them.
Also, I have to give it up for PlayStation Pony. That's nearly Shakespearean in its alliteration.
You like that? Well, I had to throw it in there because I know what's going to happen. You're going to get somebody that's going to come on and listen. They're going to be sending you mail. They're going to be like, he's just a PlayStation guy. But I think my next picks will prove that that's not totally true.
Well, let's see if your next pick stays on the board, because Tom gets the last pick in round number 1. Tom, you get to start your lineup here. We've got the PS5 controller and the NES controller off the board. What do you want to be the first to add to your fantasy gaming room?
So, all things considered, I'm very intimidated by Steven having 65 consoles and dropping the knowledge he just dropped. But I'm still going to remain unchanged with my pick. But I definitely feel like I should have done more prep work. That being said, I'm going to go with the DualShock, like the PlayStation DualShock controller, because I feel like that was a standard for, I don't even know how many years. Someone help me out, but that was a standard on PlayStation for however long, probably until PS5. I could definitely be wrong, but I don't know.
It started about halfway through PS1 cycle. They ended up bringing the DualShock.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
so,
right.
And again, I think that's a solid pick. You know, again, it was the first attempt of doing DualShock like that. And I mean, again, at the time, I think it was a good choice on their part. I mean, that they ended up adding that when it did, because it gave a whole extra mechanic to a lot of games.
I see you got the email, Tom. Way to go. Now you're welcome to the pony stable.
Yeah, thanks for sending me a quick text.
Hey, I'm there. Hey, I'm there for you. Told you that before. I'm here.
Glad to see I'm getting some words of encouragement from my opponents here. I don't know if it's pity or they're just feeling better about their teams now. The laughter is not helping Brian, by the way.
Well, I'm just laughing. You guys are already going first pick PlayStation. I mean, like, you're already pigeonholing your guys is right there into the PlayStation categories.
No, we're making sure that we stay at the top. We'll just throw the other ones in underneath.
Yeah, I got some. Like I said, I got some sleepers here.
My next one's gonna surprise you, I think.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a Nintendo junkie, so I'm right there with you, Brian. So I'd be in that same lane. Although I will give Tom this credit. I think if you're looking at controllers overall, probably the most owned of any controller would be the PS2 DualShock, as it is the best-selling console of all time. You know, being wrapped up with a DVD player, you can't argue that even the non-gaming households would have to interact with that controller. So, Tom, at least for that factor, it feels like a strong pick.
I'm glad you support it, because my other backup was, whether it's the PS3 DVD or it's the PS4 DVD remote, that was my other pick.
I just want to point out that nobody picks an Xbox controller as their first pick. So the market, yeah, we can see that Xbox is going down. Just saying.
Steven be throwing shade.
Woof.
I'm just saying. It's all you Xbox lovers out there that are listening. No, I'm just kidding.
I am a Mac guy over Microsoft, I will say that.
Microsoft, a proud not sponsor of CGP.
Could you imagine? They're like, oh, we have some dollars. Here you go. Oh, no, wait.
Yeah, we heard about this podcast you guys did in 2024.
We got demonetized. That was 2024 for us. Well, that's the end of round number 1. But as we said, this is a snake draft. So that means last out is first in. So, Tom, you get to go back-to-back on your picks. So not only did he secure perhaps the most owned controller of all time, he also gets to pick maybe a personal preference for his second pick.
All right. So, and you said something a couple minutes ago about, like, most widely owned, most whatever sales for the console. And so I've got two here that I'm kind of waffling back and forth with. Both are Nintendo's. I'm going to show my cards a little bit to my opponents, just out of, being a good host. I feel like I'm going to go with the SNES controller.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, I was considering that one. I mean, because again, they took the greatness of the original and they literally came with a controller that had more buttons and felt great and worked great. I mean, the layout of it all was perfect, and even how they angled the buttons is really, how they should have done it when they even did like the NES dog bone. Because when you think about how it kind of became Y and B as your core two buttons on a lot of games, that was real smart on their end.
Really, really smart on my end too, is what you're trying to say, Brian. I appreciate it.
I ain't gonna lie, Tom. That was my third pick. I was gonna go there for the third pick.
Oh, third. Ooh, bottom of the draft order.
Third
Okay.
pick. Yeah, I was gonna go there.
All right.
Snatching it up.
I'm not sure if you're throwing shade or if that's just
No.
I can take it either way.
Well, if you want it to be shade, we can throw shade. If you want it to be shade.
I mean, it's a draft. I feel like.
Okay, well, so that was a safe number 2 pick for you because everybody knows the SNES, top-selling Nintendo system of all time.
Safe pick indeed. I will say, I feel you were having a ball there with that outro there, Steven. But you know what? Let's outro into that. Let's intro into your second overall pick. This is the 5th pick of the draft. You get to add your second to your collection. What's it going to be, Steven?
So, because Brian took the NES controller, I'm going to go with the TurboGrafx 16 controller. I knew people would be surprised by that because the simplicity of it, I think the D-pad, one button. The only thing that it had stock over the NES, obviously, was the turbo buttons on it. I always thought it felt good in the hands. It kind of had the rounded corners that the NES didn't have, to kind of make it didn't jam into your hands and whatnot. So I'm going to go with that, and it's one of my favorite consoles.
Let me volunteer this out loud, listeners and players here. If someone came to me and said, Corey, I'm going to give you $100 if you can accurately predict Steven's next pick, or I'm going to kick you in the junk. Let me tell you something. My balls would be hurting. That was a wild pick, Steven.
I told you nobody would have thought that I would have picked that.
Again, it's a good, console-wise, it was, it just came out at the wrong time. If it would have came out years prior when it actually came out in Japan, like if they didn't take so long redesigning it here for the state release, I think it would have been a whole different outlook. But, when it came out literally like a week after the Sega Genesis, it just put it in a real bad spot. But to your point, though, the TurboGrafx 16 was for the most part an NES controller with turbo, and I enjoy the system a lot as well. I actually jokingly always call it the Turbo Shmup 16, and for me that's great because I love shmups.
I can't argue with your love of shmups. What I can tell you, though, is that you get to be in a power position. Tom, Steven, this is where I really think it's like, man, Brian's got an advantage here because he gets to round out round number 2 and then get the final of his picks in a row. That's a pretty power position there. So, Brian, you kind of have an entire swath at your table to take from. So how do you want to start with your 2 picks in a row here? Your round 2 pick.
I think for my round 2, seeing that, my other opponents here went with the 16-bit era, I'm going to go with the Sega Genesis 6-button controller.
Ooh, I don't know. I think you're getting a call from the back office on that one. I hear some boos.
No, because here's the thing with Sega. Like, Sega always tried to bring the arcade experience to the console. And, when they went with the controller designs, they always had slightly bigger buttons, different things to try and emulate more of that arcade experience. So when you had a 6-button controller that actually had all 6 buttons on the front of it, instead of having to have LR buttons, things like that, it just really gave you that true kind of like arcade experience in your hand. And again, it's a very, very comfortable controller, and it's one of my favorites still to this day.
Did it have shoulder bumpers? I swear some had. I swear maybe I have one that's different, but I know like the 6-button one.
So they had a little mode button because when they released it, some games couldn't work with the 6-button, so the mode button would allow it to tricked the system into thinking it was a 3-button controller.
Gotcha.
And then I think there was 1 or 2 games that actually used the mode button to do like an extra function or something. I can't remember what those games were though.
Well,
And
as
then
they
I got-
say, Sega does what Nintendo don't, and that pick might have done some good work for you there. And Brian, as you're alluding to, yeah, you have your next pick. This is the final pick for your fantasy controller lineup. As the controller guy in the room, this has got a lot of pressure. Right now, you currently have the NES controller, and as we just heard, the Sega Genesis controller in your fantasy gaming room. What's going to round it out?
To round it out, I got to go. And again, I can't wait to see the faces here as Xbox 360. I mean, with the Xbox 360,
Yeah, I can't
like
argue
said,
with that.
I mean, they got the feel of it right. Because again, I didn't mind the Duke, but I know for a lot of people that was very, very bulky. And so when they made what they did for the 360, I mean, again, D-pad was good, holds well, and again, I prefer the analog placements on that more than I do on a PlayStation.
I would just have preferred if you would have selected whether you're talking about the white colored one or the black one, because you got the white one, then Cheeto stains are going to show up all over it. I would say you lose points.
That's going to be any white controller.
I'm just saying that was notorious. My Xbox 360 controller that came with the control was so dirty back in the day. I remember seeing that thing. I'm like, oh god, this is gross.
And for your boomer translation, kiddos, that would be the equivalent of Taki stains. Just for our younger listeners, I want to give them that.
True. Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome. No, I think it's indisputable. I think the 360 controller definitely won out in the PS3 console war. It was undeniably a better controller. It's not even particularly close. It was a gorgeous piece of art. So I like the pick a lot. And it's also good to get a little bit of Xbox representation on here, despite Steven's complete disdain for Microsoft, as we've already established.
I'm not going to argue. The Xbox 360 was the console of that era. I think we could all agree with that, right? I think we all, like, they had it hands down, online, everything. They had PlayStation.
Oh, it was no doubt that was Microsoft's prime. I mean, they've never been able to get back to that. Again, not that Xbox systems are bad, because they're not, but but again, they lost. Like, Sony made mistakes with the PS3, and they were able to take advantage of that with the 360, and they just, like I said, they just haven't been able to get to that prime again.
Let me quantify why I was anti-Xbox. The reason I'm anti-Xbox, that I've explained in some other podcasts, is right now they're pushing hard. For those of us that are collectors, they're pushing hard for digital. And, I'm all about collecting the physical, right? And having that.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're trying to push the market to where, collectors just can't get these games anymore, and doing these cloud passes. I know there's room for both, but just going that hard on it, that's where I have to kind of go, I can't deal with you, Microsoft.
Microsoft, proud sponsor of CGP podcast.
Well, and to that point, I think it's just because they know they can't win the traditional console war, and I think they've decided that we're just not going to try. That they want to really go with the approach of they want to be the Netflix of gaming. So at the end of the day, they want Game Pass on as many things as possible, and they would prefer you to buy that subscription instead of buying the games individually. And I think that's really their focus. And I would not be surprised if the next Xbox console, if we do get one, ends up just being a digital only, because they just want it to be that Game Pass like device.
It is possible. I will say I was off of the 360 the second they tried to be more like the Wii and push the Kinect, and they came out with Star Wars Kinect, where you could dance as Han Solo to riding solo. That's when I was out. Sorry, Microsoft. But what I'm not sorry about is our next pick, because it goes to Steven himself to round out his collection. He currently has the PS5 controller and the Dark Horse pick of the day, the TurboGrafx 16. How do you want to round out your collection today, sir?
I'm going to round it out with the Sega Saturn controller, the 6-button. Kind of along with Brian, I really did like the Genesis controller, but he's competition, so I can't agree with him. But no, and Brian, if you know the model, but there's this Sega Saturn controller that I have that has the matte outside. It's like a border, and then it has these. It's very shiny in the center of the controller. I don't know what the model is off the top of my head because I know the Saturn had multiple. I call them the Batwing controllers. That's what I call them.
Yeah, I don't remember the model number, but I believe that was the original design, and then
Okay.
when they did like the Model 2 is when they went slightly different on the controller.
Where it kind of looked more like a Panasonic 3DO, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I might have those reversed, but I'm pretty sure that was the first iteration.
But that's my. I really like the feel of it. I like how they have the bumpers implemented on it. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a solid controller, I think.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with you. I mean, again, they really took the Sega Genesis 6-button controller and again just added more for the 32-bit era, and the one thing I was kind of surprised, which I know Retrobit actually recently did it here, was when Sony ended up doing their DualShock controller, I was really surprised you didn't see that get melded in a similar fashion. And, instead you had the 3D controller, for Knights or whatever, but that was kind of an awkward controller in itself. But
Also, you can't argue with how sweet that controller felt when you're playing Panzer Dragoon Saga. That was the life.
And that's what you have to realize, and that's a great point, Corey, to bring up, is the fact that a lot of these controllers are based upon hours and hours and hours of gameplay, man. Like, I don't know about you guys, but you get into a game like Zelda or Faxanadu or Chrysalis on NES, and you have the markings on your hands, right? You have them embedded in there because you're playing for hours. And I don't know about the rest of my competition here if they agree with this, but picking a controller has also to do with playing hours and hours and hours. It's not just button feel. You can deal with button feel, but if you can't hold that controller for hours, forget it. It's useless.
All right, well, we got one last pick on the board, and that goes to the final boss, Tom Jenkins, with the final pick. Currently, your lineup is the DualShock PS2/1, kind of getting a 2-for-1 value there, and the SNES controller. But what is going to be the one that lines out your video game collection? He is salivating, friends.
He was just calling a few minutes ago. Did you see that? He was calling it.
Just you guys just been sleeping on this.
He's trying to trade up with Detroit right now, I think, is what was going to happen, but that's not possible.
This is my Patrick Mahomes pick here. I'm predicting it. It's going to go in the 9th round, or whatever this is. 3rd pick, whatever. I don't know. Football. Tecmo Bowl. All right. You guys ready? Steven, Brian, you ready?
We're ready. I'm ready.
I am going with, Corey, get ready, the Dreamcast controller.
I typed that out earlier when I was testing this out. I somehow knew you were going to pick this, Tom. I knew it.
I mean, I did play a lot of Power Stone growing up, but okay.
It's Sonic Adventure, isn't it? It's Sonic Adventure.
I mean, could be. I mean, Seaman, right? A lot of great games, a lot of classics. You guys were just talking about how long you would play a game for, and I'm in my mind.
That's just an AVGN reference. I swear, You're only choosing that because of the AVGN episode.
It's true. But you guys were just talking about how a controller equals how long you could play a game for. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I didn't really play that Dreamcast games very long. But in all seriousness, I think it was beyond incredibly inventive for its time. I mean, you had the controller, and then it was actually like another little controller
the VMU.
too, right? It had the VMU with the screen on it.
You could raise your chows in it.
Right, yeah. And that was like during the time when wasn't like all those Tamagotchi and
the Gigapets.
Right, the Gigapets. I mean, at the time, that thing was unbelievable. The worst part of it, though, obviously, was where the cord came out the bottom and you have to tuck it up the top part. And then now, today, speaking of like being collectors and stuff, I'm like, okay, where are all that VMU card, and you lose it, and then, yeah, it goes on. But I will say, in all seriousness, that controller has a sweet spot for me. And I always felt really comfortable picking it up. I loved it. I love the interaction with the game in that screen. So yeah, it's a sleeper, but I feel confident in it. Hopefully, no one else agrees. The silence echoes that.
Well,
I'm waiting for Brian to get you right now.
Brian's coming for the jugular, right?
No, the Dreamcast is one of my favorite consoles. I mean, they did so many things right, and and actually I think it was on Steven's last episode that you did. I said it in the live chat that I think it had one of the strongest game lineups coming out on its release day that we've never really seen since. I mean, they had so many heavy hitters on day one that were available. And now with the controller, I do give it props for being unique in what they were trying to do. Again, I think they took some ideas from that 3D style controller of the Saturn.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, which, was a matter of preference there. But I think the issue with it, though, was because of the type of arcade games they were releasing a lot of the time, especially if you were into the fighting games, like that controller was absolutely horrendous for that. Where, I mean, you had to try to, I forget even what I spent, but I remember importing like the Sega Dreamcast 6-button fighting pad, to be able to actually play Marvel vs. Capcom, because to play it on the regular Dreamcast controller was rough. But now something like Power Stone, it was fine. Sonic Adventure, it was good. But I'm with you though, that the cord coming out of the bottom, I don't know why anyone ever thinks that was a good idea on any controller, ever made. But yeah, I do give it props though with trying to be inventive with the VMU and stuff.
This reminds me of like me dating my now wife back in the day. Get all the compliments up first, and she's like, "Well, here's all the things I would have done differently." But I feel bad.
Wait, Tom.
But you did a really good job. I just remember someone else doing all these things better. But I love you,
Tom. You could save the pick. You could change it to the Retro Fighters Dreamcast controller, which looks like your PS4, PS2 controller, like without the analog sticks.
No, I'm sticking with my pick. I'm sticking with it.
Oh.
It's my
Tom's sticking by his guns. Also, I have to just give credit. I love how Brian gave Tom love by trying to defend your hardware choice with software. And that is just
yes.
That's just chef's kiss. So
that's what I was saying. It was eerily reminiscent of like dating days. So I'm like,
but to back Tom up, I really love the Dreamcast. I think it's one of the best.
Guys, you don't have to keep playing it on. I'm
no.
It's good. We don't have to go out for a second date. I'm good. I love you guys.
I think it was before its time, but I'm glad you picked that as your third pick, because you just kind of put Brian and I in the tie for first place. That's okay. We'll take it.
That's why I asked at the beginning. I said, Corey, is this like a gentleman's draft where I should take one for the team?
Yes, this is all very gentlemanly based on drafts I've been in for in the past. So,
right,
but speaking of which, we do have to determine a winner, as Steven was so eloquently putting it. And as I said, the points don't matter, so we're going to go into the points round. That's going to come in 3 different phases. The first is one that I like to call, quote, healthy and spirited group debates. That's right. Whoever debates the best is going to get a point. I'm going to start with Steven. Steven, why did Tom suck so bad in this draft?
Well, I don't think he sucked so bad. It's whoever was calling him and telling him what picks to pick obviously was ill-informed and hasn't had much experience in the retro gaming world.
I'll agree. I think I'll have to have a conversation with the back office.
Brian,
back office let you down, Tom.
Brian, I'm going to go to you. You can pick yourself if you like to, but just reviewing the picks here, you ended up, Brian, with the NES controller, Sega Genesis, Xbox 360, Steven with the PS5, TurboGrafx 16, and Sega Saturn, and Tom with the DualShock, SNES, and Dreamcast controller. Of these picks, which one was your favorite? You can pick your own.
I mean, obviously, since this is kind of a competition, I gotta say myself, right? I mean, but no, I mean, but honestly, though, I mean, I don't think any of us picked anything really bad. I mean, Dreamcast one was probably the mediocre out of all of them, but I mean, I think we all had good, strong picks for good reasons. Because again, like the NES, I mean, it's a simple controller, but look how many other systems copied it. You had the Master System try it, you had the TurboGrafx try it. A lot of like the MSX had some forms of it. There's other ones out there, but again, when you went from what was in those second-gen consoles, which we won't even talk about ColecoVision, Atari 5200, or Intellivision controllers. I mean, you went from that mess to just that simplistic thing, and it was a great experience. And again, I think everyone here gave good reasons why we picked what we picked. So,
Tom, I have a simple question to ask you. Why didn't anyone, particularly you, select the Wavebird?
wasn't on my list. It was not on my list. If it was, I was going to give someone else grief, but it was not on my list.
I'm surprised that the GameCube didn't get any love, because to me, that is the best controller of all time. I would put that up there against the NES controller really easily. But
I wonder about that one all the time, too. I'm like, really? You know, and even with Smash and everything, I'm like, gosh, that controller was never comfortable.
Better than the Dreamcast controller.
No way.
Oh, it was better. It was 100%
that controller was a mess. Like, there was like the little.
I'm not
thing on the
denying it's not a
side.
mess, but it's still better than. Brian, help me out here. It was better than the
mess.
Dreamcast, wasn't it?
I mean, it definitely held better in the hands, but now the only thing when it comes to the GameCube, and I never did understand it, is like the weird shaped buttons. Like why some were like, you get the big red button and the little gray buttons next to it, and then then they had to try to still give you some N64 love for whatever reason and give you the the C analog stick down there and stuff. So
thank you, Brian.
I love
mean,
the Wavebird. I'll ride or die with the Wavebird. Being able to play wireless was such a big deal. But I get it. I get that the buttons were weird. It was really satisfying when it wasn't coated with different foods around to just press that big A button. It just felt good. Also, it was great for Soul Calibur 2, which is my jam. That's my Battletoads.
I'm surprised nobody picked the Panasonic 3DO, and I was going to do it, and then I held back. I was kind of just because I like the way you can link the controller off the controller. Right, every console you have to plug the additional controllers into the console. People end up tripping. Where like if you're on the couch, at least you can link them together, and you have one cord that you can possibly trip over.
Or if you're playing a multiplayer game, the person gets mad at you and they yank it.
Well, don't take away my strategy here, Brian. Come on now.
I have to say I was a little turned off by the 3DO controller, if only because my last playthrough of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties went horribly wrong. I'm going to give the point to this round with healthy, spirited debate to Steven. Steven, well done. I appreciated the correct timing and digs for Mr. Tom Jenkins. I thought you got the points just strictly based on that. The next point of scoring goes to the Google test. Throughout this entire thing, I've been typing in each response into an analytics searcher to see which one got the most hits and the most amount of views and page creations. It was relatively close, but not actually. The point winner for this one goes to Tom. Tom, congratulations. You got the points on that one. And that's strictly analytics, y'all. Did you watch Moneyball before we started?
I think that's strictly pity points. Corey's like, yeah, I've been doing a bunch of data in the background, and Tom wins. Thanks. See you later. Next question. Thank you, Corey.
I plead the fifth.
Okay,
Finally, the host choice. That's going to be me. I'm going to pick one of these lineups here.
Wait, so you're saying I've already used mine, then? This is what you're saying.
I continue to plead the fifth. Like Brian so eloquently put, there's a lot of great lineups here. As much as I love the Wavebird and I'm sad that it did not make it here, I still believe that there are some great lineups. I appreciate that each of you kind of went with your own strategy. Steven, you're like dark horse controllers that people don't know, but for the 5 people that remember them, they're going to be like, yeah, that was right. Tom decided to go, I think, revolutionary, which I appreciate, but in the end, I'm going to go host choice and pick the man, the myth, the BD Mods legend, the NES controller, Sega Genesis, Xbox 360. Host choice point goes to Brian. Nice one, man. That's a good lineup right there. I'd feel pretty good about those picks if I were you, Brian.
Thanks.
But
hey, at the end of the day, we all tied then. We all got 1 point, right?
That's what I was just going to ask, because Corey.
Well, wait.
Where are we at right now?
We could solve this. Because here's the.
Can we, Steven?
Yeah, tiebreaker round. The worst.
All right, yeah. What's your last pick? Your last.
Control.
Corey's got a plan. Corey always has a plan. I'm waiting.
So Brian actually already did steal my thunder here, which is in a tiebreaker scenario, you now need to name for me the worst controller ever made. That's what I want to hear. So as we said, first out, last in. Tom, I'm putting you on the spot first. You had about 10 seconds to prepare. What's the worst controller ever designed?
Shoot. I mean, do I go with I got two.
Wait. Before he says anything, can it be anything? Or does it have to be like your physical controller that you hold in your hand?
I'm going to go. So I do want to put a kibosh on anyone saying like terrible like UIs on app-based games. So like a physical controller on a console that you could have bought.
But I mean,
are you going for like the Power Glove, Steven? Is that where you're
well,
leaning into?
so that's what I want to make sure. I want to see.
Yeah.
Like, are you counting
if you want to go for something like
fishing,
that, no, please.
fishing controllers like that?
If you want to, but know that like it has to have the visceral reaction, right? So it's got to be something that people know, i.e., me. So if you want to pick, like the gamepad, you could. But, like what's
but
what's
the impact factor
of,
on it is low. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
it needs an impact, right? I have to be the voice of the people, so when people listen to this episode, they don't roast me for not picking that bad pick.
Okay. So stay out of the really past 40-year ago consoles and kind of keep it a little bit.
People still remember the Power Glove. They'll still remember the Power Glove.
Okay, Power Glove era. Okay, all right.
Well, God, I got a couple. Shoot, why do I have to go first? This is hard. All right.
I told you before, last out, first in. It was part of the beginning of this game, dude.
I'm gonna go with. Oh shoot. I'm gonna go with the Genesis 3-button controller.
Should have stuck with the Power Glove.
I don't know though, because I feel like it didn't have that doesn't have any influence, right? I mean, it's either that or I had another one, but I'm not gonna say it.
All the Sega fans are not coming to CGC this year. I'm just saying.
The 3-button, you couldn't even play some games with it, right? Like you couldn't, so.
Fighting games were particularly tough. I get where he's coming from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Mortal Kombat was significantly better on the SNES. That's fair.
Right.
Although the blood and gore, we're not gonna go there, Steven, you're up next. Worst controller of all time.
Oh, hands down, the Atari Jaguar. Hands down.
Oh, that's a strong pick.
Hands down.
That's a strong pick right there.
Yeah, because it doesn't even work half the time still. But I mean, isn't it?
Speaking from experience, I have the system. So it's I will give it this. It does feel nice and better. Sorry, Tom. Better than the Dreamcast controller. It does feel nicer in the hand, but it makes no sense. It just, Brian, come on, right? It's
so Jaguar is one of those unappreciated systems, and I have one as well because I love my Atari stuff, and and like you, I mean, it feels great, but I mean, just the order of how the buttons are and just the keypad, I get what they were going with, but I mean, it's clunky. I mean, they did it because they thought there was going to be online play with the console and that you needed that keypad for dialing in on stuff, but it's not an ideal controller for its time for sure.
Well, Brian, that brings us to you. Let's review the worst controller picks so far. Steven has picked the Jaguar controller, and Tom picked the 3-button Genesis controller, which, spoilers, is not going to win.
I'm fully aware now that the Jaguar was out there. Thank you for full disclosure, Corey.
I've never had someone thank me for telling them that they're about to lose. What a brand new experience. I like it.
Brian, beating the worst controller of all time.
So I guess before I get mine, it does need to be a controller you hold in your hand, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, where I get where Steven's coming from, but I mean, to this day, the Atari 5200 has the worst controller ever. I mean, the non-centering analog stick, and good luck even finding one that works anymore. And again, I always joke because I feel like whoever designed the Jaguar decided to go back in time and thought the 5200 controller was a good controller. And hey, let's take everything from that and add it into the Jaguar controller. So, my pick hands down is 5200.
I was going to pick that, but somebody said this century. So
Jaguar's not this century.
I'm kidding.
Well, we have Jaguar versus 5200, and it's coming down to it. Drum roll, please, to the winner of the 2024 video game controller draft. It's going to be Brian. Congratulations with that pick of the 5200. Wow, wow, wooey, wow, and for all the right reasons too. You gotta love it, folks. Now that you've won, Brian, tell us, what are you going to do next, sir?
Probably going to go work on making some more controllers here.
Seems about right. It is convention season after all.
Yes.
But it was a good game played by all. Everyone had some strong picks and strong reasonings, and of course, shade to throw at Tom. So y'all gave me joy for the last 45 minutes.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, and I see Steven laughing too right now. Like, of all choices, the 3-button Genesis.
I mean,
I know. It's almost like you threw your pick on purpose. That's what
Right.
If you want to go low-hanging fruit, you could have just said the Duke or the 64, just for the lowest hanging fruit. But he's like, no, I'm going to go with the beloved controller.
You could have even said the
Play
Resident
Sonic
Evil
2
4
on.
chainsaw controller, which was the one I was going to go with, except for the
Guys.
fact Corey said it had to be something he knew. So, because that was a bad controller.
Got to
Let's
give
just-
something for people to talk about, right? Give the people what they want.
I did like the idea of it being worse, but I don't like the idea of taking shit out of a controller that I have a lot of fond memories about. Tom, regardless, you're still a winner to me because you kind of pay my paychecks. Anyway,
And you're
let's-
stuck with me.
That's true. There's no getting out at this point. Hey guys, thank you so much for being a guest on the Cleveland Gaming Podcast. Let's leave off with where people can find you. Brian, I know you're going to be going to a lot of shows and you got a great online marketplace. Tell us.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, www.bdretromods.com. There's links there to go to my Etsy store, or you can email me directly for orders, or you can kind of see me here in the convention season where, looking to be at Korgs, looking to be at CGC, Torg. Those are the ones I kind of got lined up right now, and could be some others yet, but that's where you can find me.
Love that. And Steven, of course, we got the Tech Buzz. What's your journey looking like this year?
You guys can find me at ttbgaming.com, as well as just search the Tech Buzz anywhere. And yeah, my goal is to be at Cleveland, Korgs, got a few other Pittsburgh that we'll be doing some live broadcasting at and things like that. So it should be a lot of fun.
It sure does seem like it'll be a lot of fun. But Brian, Steven, you guys want to go play a little bit of Sonic 3 and Knuckles while Tom sits back and weeps into his eyes with his 3-button Genesis controller?
We can always upgrade them to the 6-button.
I'm gifting them each a Jaguar controller at CGC this year. It's going to come with a nice bow on it. I mean, those things actually probably are worth, what, like $50 or something?
Actually, they are worth a lot of money.
That's what I was going to say, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you get a little gift from me when you come to CGC, you're welcome. That's all I'm saying. Thanks for being here.
Tom, the Sega Genesis 3-button controller. You're really playing with people's nostalgia on this one.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. Because you couldn't play Mortal Kombat. You can't play NBA Jam because I used to run Tecmo Jam Cleveland. And I know I had to go out and find a bunch of 6-button Sega Genesis controllers. So, yeah, I'm sticking with it. Deal.
I appreciate the conviction, but, I think you and I can both agree that Brian rightfully won with that 5,200 pick.
That, and the Jaguar, as I thought about it too. I mean, and I know that controller's obviously notorious for not working today, but all things in hindsight, it's aged, right? But also, too, the Sega Genesis, think of how much real estate is on that controller, and there's like just 3 buttons in that massive amount of space there. Anyways, I'm not going to win this one. I lost the draft. I'm willing to move on, and I will never hold this against you. I promise.
That was not a very convincing line delivery, but the question is, do you agree with our winner? Did Brian win? Do you think that one of the other lineups deserved that trophy? And do you agree with Tom's angsty pick, the 3-button Sega Genesis controller? Let us know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the socials. We're a small show and we grow because of the love of all of you. So GameCleveland.com, find the Cleveland Gaming Classic on Instagram, on Facebook, and all the places in between. TikTok as well.
But Corey, what do you think? Do we hit save on this file for now?
I think you're on to it. Let's go ahead and put a button on this one. My name is Corey.
It's Final Boss Tom.
And thank you for listening to the
Cleveland
Cleveland
Gaming Podcast.
Powering down.